This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. About 2 years ago, I was asked if I wanted to film a demo for one of these, and since then I've been asking for a while if I could potentially review one for the channel, and today is the day that one actually showed up, so thank you to Yamaha for that. And here is what we did with an upside down guitar. It is a Yamaha Pacifica, which I think in the UK are a little bit underrated, perhaps. Get out of there. This is the highest in the range of Pacificas, a 612, and feels very lightweight. But I think this is actually quite a good value for money guitar. Nemo. Particularly as you get with it, Seymour Duncan, these are the SSL ones, kind of vintage voice single coils, you know, proper decent pickups that you don't normally get at this kind of price range in a guitar, right? Sort of 600 to 800 pounds. You know, the PRS Silver Sky has its own kind of cheaper pickups that are made over in Indonesia. These are proper Seymour Duncans, and that's a proper Fenton. Let's see how it sounds. The story of the Yamaha Pacifica is actually a little bit of a thing which did start off with quite a strong identity, and I think it'd be fair to say, I think in my opinion, that in the Western world at least, the Pacifica, or in the UK I should especially say, is my experience, the Pacifica has got a bit of a different reputation to how it started off. If you don't know the story, the Pacifica actually started off as like a super strat from the same guy who invented the RG, or came out with the RG. You know, obviously Steve Vai had a big part in the RG gem kind of development as well. But the Pacifica followed hot on the heels of that super strat thing, and it came with neck which is very similar to the RG. And my friend Chris has a couple of these, and they're very much, you know, a super strat Floyd Rose situation, exuberant colours. I think not to everyone's taste these days, but they did have a strong identity. Nowadays, for me, I feel like, for me personally, my own experience of playing a Yamaha Pacifica was pretty much limited to seeing examples that might come up in a school. So typically they'd have very old strings on them, and wouldn't be terribly well looked after. Or, coming across sort of used examples that maybe like 30 to 90 quid or something that you found on Facebook, and they're the very entry-level models. Now, one of my sort of criticisms of the Pacifica in its current form is that there's not one of the kind of higher-end examples. So this is one of the things that Fender do very well. For example, if you want to go and buy a Fender Stratocaster, you can spend as little as about £150 or as much as £10,000, and they end up, although they look similar, across the entire range, there is sort of something for anyone with any amount of money to buy something that looks like a Fender Stratocaster. For the Pacifica, you've got the very low-end models, and it goes up as far as this, which is like the higher-end model for a Pacifica, which is like £750 at the moment. There's no Japanese-made Pacifica that a normal person like you or I can buy. They have done some really interesting things in the custom shop, so you can see Paul Hindmarsh's Pacifica. I think Jack Thammarat has one as well, and you can also see there's some really cool guitars that came out of the custom shop that I think people at the time were really keen for as well. But this one here, so a £750 guitar, sort of in the realm of something like a Fender Mexican Player Plus or a PRS Silver Sky SE, a little bit more expensive than a Sire Larry Carlton. I think the unique thing about the Pacifica is that you end up with quite a comfortable sort of C medium shaped neck, but with quite a flat radius. The unique thing about the Silver Sky SE would be that you've got the vintage style radius, sort of like 8.25 inches. I think this is over 12 inches, I think, something like that. Quite a flat radius. In general, quite comfortable. I think where the Pacifica probably does beat the competition, we do have like fairly high-end Seymour Duncan pickups in there, and I do think they sound really decent, and a little bit more vintage output and voiced than perhaps the Silver Sky SE and perhaps the Sire guitars. So you get a little bit maybe of a more stratty flavour out of it, which is weird to say given it is, not necessarily the most stratty looking thing. Also, the Wilkinson Trem is 6-point vintage, although it has some other kind of things going on with it. But yeah, I've changed the strings from the factory. They came with 9s on. I've put on 11s here, and it's actually coped with that quite well. So I guess that probably points to it being a fairly high quality guitar, right? If it can go from having 9s on it to 11s and still remain pretty stable, I think that has got to be a good sign. In terms of the tones coming out of it, like I say, I think it's got quite a nice vintage flavour. And pickup wise, we can also coil split this pickup here. I think this might be the kind of ideal setup for a lot of gigging musicians. I hear all the time that people like to have a humbucker in the bridge, so quite practical. We've got the 22nd fret. We've also got truss rod adjustment up at the headstock, which is a nice thing, I think.
kind of my take on the Pacifica at the moment. It sort of reminds me of that kind of Henry Ford kind of idea where it's like it's one colour and it's this. The Pacifica is like, well, we build a model 112 up to 612, but they're essentially all the same thing. It's just some of them have some nicer appointments, right, and some nicer hardware. I think for the Pacifica to get some of its va-va-voom back, you'd have to build, I think, one of those aspirational higher-end models, like they've done with the Revstar, right, which I think they've done a really good job, where you've got kind of the Japanese top of the tier, you've got that kind of mid-tier stuff as well, right, and this fits probably into the mid-tier of guitars. But I do think you get what is kind of quite a utilitarian, quite a professional level, quite a tidy instrument, you know, sort of no frills, and also wife-approved colour schemes. So it's kind of rare. Lenny doesn't tend to like quite a lot of the guitars that I bring into the house. Like, looks-wise, either they're quite boring, but today she looked at this one, she did actually really like it. She said, oh, that colour is lovely. And she even liked the scratch plate interaction with it, which she normally doesn't. And that I thought was interesting, because typically I would have thought that a Pacifica doesn't exactly turn the eyes of many spouses, but she seemed to like the look of it. So all round, I think the Pacifica for me is a bit of an underrated instrument. Flatter radius, but decent quality parts, decent pickups, decent hardware. The Wilkinson hardware, I think, is really underrated. Grover locking tuners as well. A very comfortable neck shape. All in all, respectable, but I think Pacifica would need one of those higher end models to make a resurgence, in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think this sits nicely amongst the sort of Mexican player, PRS Silver Sky SE kind of range, and for gigging musicians, having this here is definitely a plus as well. Sort of similar as well to what the Ibanez AZ has ended up being, where you've got this kind of HSS configuration, a more vintage style tremolo, quite a flat radius and quite a comfortable neck, and interesting, but not stainless steel frets on this, whereas the Ibanez AZ does have that. I think looks wise as well, the Ibanez AZ has quite a lot going for it, as well as being really cool guitars. So yeah, you'll see this on the channel a bit more, thanks to Yamaha for letting me check one out. 2 years ago was the last time I played one of these, when I went to London and filmed a little bit of a promotional video with one. The frets are a little bit not as polished as the Revstar that I've got, that is very kind of smooth feeling. That is stainless steel frets on that one though. But interesting guitars, I think underrated, and potentially worth a look for something reliable that you could pick up off the shelf that you know is going to be able to do the job. Are there other guitars that you think fit that mould better? Would you play a Pacifica? What are your thoughts on it? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Cheers for now.